Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I, as the Chairperson on the Standing Committee on Public Accounts who moved the motion, take this opportunity to speak on the motion on the review of the performance audit report for access for persons with disabilities to public offices and public transport. Honourable Speaker say, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was signed by Fiji on 2nd June 2010 and ratified in 2017. Honourable Speaker, further, the 2010 Constitution of the Republic of Fiji clearly outlines the rights of persons with disabilities. It established the right to equality and freedom from discrimination on the grounds of an individual act or supposed personal characteristics or circumstances, including disability. Honourable Speaker say, provisions in the Constitution even stipulates under Section 26(6) that the proprietor of the place or service to shop, hotels, lodging house, public restaurants, place of public entertainment, clubs, education, institutions, public transport services, taxis, and public places must facilitate reasonable access for persons with disabilities to the extent that is prescribed by the law. Honourable Speaker, this performance audit carried out was based on the release made by the Fiji Bureau of Stats on the 2017 population and housing census dated 5th January 2018, which recorded total enumerated population of 884,887. Out of this number, 829,907 were reported as being at the age of 3 years and above, of which a total of 113,595 persons were reported to have had at least one functioning challenge. The number equates to a rate of 13.7%, which is close to the international benchmark of 15%. The main objective of the audit that was conducted by Office of Auditor General was to assess on whether the strategies, action plans, and processes of the provision of access for persons with disabilities are effectively and efficiently administered by National Council for Persons with Disabilities and relevant stakeholders in order to ensure ease of accessibility to public office and public transport. Honourable Speaker say, the audit also covered the roles of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities in working with relevant stakeholders, including the Department of Transport, Land Transport Authority, Fiji Roads Authority, Department of Civil Aviation, Department of Building of the Ministry of Infrastructure and Meteorological Services, Municipal Council, Department of Town and Country Planning, Construction Implementation Unit of Ministry of Economy, and other stakeholders such as NGOs, CSOs, and disabled persons organizations to successfully plan, implement, and monitor the provision of accessibility for persons with disabilities. This committee scrutinized 5 main key focus areas of the audit that includes 1. Legislation and policy framework, 2. Stakeholders arrangement and engagement, 3. Policy implementation on access for disabilities, 4. Disabled accessibility to public transport, and 5. Monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. Fiji, in recognizing the international and regional commitment, the government had developed a 10-year national disability policy, 2008 to 2018, which was also required under the National Council for Persons with Disabilities Act 1994. The audit also pointed out the need for a review of the FNCDP Act 1994 as a current version of the legislation was administered one and discussion for a review was underway for the purpose of determining its continuing relevance to the local, regional, and international best practices. Honourable Speaker say, the Human Rights and Anti-Discrimination Commission has been educating the public about the rights and the freedom, receiving and investigating alleged violation of human rights. The Right of Persons with Disabilities Act has been developed in and aligned with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The Act seeks to provide for and uphold and enforce the rights of persons with disabilities in Fiji as provided for under the Article of the Convention and Section 42 of Fiji's 2013 Constitution. The Act captures bulk of the salient features of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and envies to empower persons with disabilities in Fiji. It is pleasing to note that while all rights of the person with disabilities are embedded into the newly enacted Right of Person with Disabilities Act of 2018, right of person with disabilities specific to reasonable access to public transport at a national level are ensured through the following legislative frameworks, namely 2013 Constitution, Land Transport Act of 1998 and its regulations. The committee noted that some work has undertaken after the amendments with regards to priority setting in PSVs and line marking for disabled persons. The National Building Code is included under the Public Health Regulation 2004 in the Public Health Act of 1935. The basic objective of the code is to ensure that acceptable standard of structural sufficiency, fire safety, health and amenity are maintained for the benefit of the community now and in the future. Honourable Speaker, the committee noted that the requirements of the law have not been effectively enforced by the officers responsible for public health on those buildings that have been built without access for people with disabilities. The Office of Auditor General meeting with public health officials mentioned the transfer of function and powers to local authorities in rural districts and boards. Stakeholder arrangements and engagement. Honourable Speaker, the committee has noted that sharing of information is still an issue with the ministry, especially in their legislation limits the sharing of individual information with outside parties, including Fiji Bureau of States. However, to mitigate these challenges, Fiji Bureau of States has been signing MOUs with some key government stakeholders and other line agencies and plans to partner with Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation in the near future due to the significant importance of consolidating and sharing the consistent disability states for necessary policy decisions. Honourable Speaker say, the committee was informed that the lack of awareness and initiative for everyone to be mindful of the plight of the disability faced by persons with disabilities are the basic reason why there has been slow progress in improving accessibility to public spaces. Generally, most people lack knowledge on the type of disabilities in Fiji and consequently are not aware of what is required to cater for people with disabilities. The committee was further informed that the Construction Industry Council board members expressed that on a very initial stage of planning, the drafters of the building plans generally lack this knowledge and in most cases work based on their experiences and may not be up to standard with new developments and best practices. This lack of awareness and initiative may also be present with engineers. The other factors highlighted by Construction Industry Council was high cost of implementing this consideration for disabilities in building plans. Collaboration and engagement with NCPD by the Department of Town and Country Planning and Municipal Council is also lacking, Honourable Speaker said. The rights of persons with disabilities are provided and protected in Part 6 of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2018, Act number 4 of 2018, Honourable Speaker. It is important to note the Act came in force and the audit was conducted. Act came in force in 2018 and the audit was conducted in 2019, while agencies were still working on the action plan with relevant agencies to implement the Act. The committee noted that the Act clearly states that the person may apply to High Court if a person feels that they are being deprived from their rights under the Act. Section 29, Part 6 of the Act clearly states that under the law, if a person with disabilities feels deprived from the rights, then the person in the position to raise the matter in the High Court. The committee also informed that NCPD also has the complaint register which deals only with mobility issues, while the rest of the complaints are referred to the Human Rights and Anti-Discrimination Commission for their action. The Commission has clearly stated that any person has the right to lodge the complaint to the Commission in regards to alleged human rights violation. Honourable Speaker said, the committee noted the audit finding and it requires serious consideration by National Council for Persons with Disabilities with relevant stakeholders to expedite the implementation and facilitation of access for persons with disabilities in public offices and public transport, respectively. In regards of this, Honourable Speaker, the committee recommends, number one, that NCPD honours the international and regional commitments through national policies and action plans that are recognized and acknowledged by its stakeholders, adequately resourced, implemented in a timely manner, and using reliable, comparable, and current and relevant disability data to support its policy. Number two, NCPD carry out periodic review of such commitment for the purpose of determining their continued relevance to local, regional, and international realities on disability issues. Number three, NCPD work more closely with LTA and Department of Transport to have a better working knowledge and understanding of 2015 legislative amendments to the LTA regulation on PSB issues on access for persons with disabilities. Number four, NCPD ensures that the Housing, Transport and Environment Advisory Committee have more regular meetings to expedite the timely execution and monitoring of the implementation plan to minimize delays to disable access inclusion in legislation and policies. Number five, the NCPD considers some of the following sustainable development goals as those were reflected in government's budget and 5-year and 20-year national development plan. One, SDG 1, end poverty; SDG 4, equal education; SDG 8, decent work and economic growth; SDG 10, reduce inequalities; SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities; and SDG 17, partnership for the goals. With the view of improving access and mobility, which are two important factors in reducing poverty and can facilitate the participation of people with disabilities in economic, social, and political processes. Number six, NCPD be adequately resourced for more conducive environment to coordinate and consult with stakeholders. And number seven, the committee recommends that NCPD, the National Council of Persons with Disabilities, consider the schedule of meetings of ADCOMs to minimize delays to ensure timely implementation of its policies. Honourable Speaker, the committee acknowledges the progressive work done by National Council for Persons with Disabilities in consultation with relevant stakeholders to ensure that access for the disability in public offices and transport is facilitated. However, more resources, commitment, and engagement is required by all stakeholders so that Fiji could fully comply with the international, regional, and local commitment which are mandated under the Convention and the relevant legislation that are currently in place. Government has passed the Right of Persons with Disabilities Act 2018, which sets the platform in ensuring no one is left behind. Honourable Speaker say, with this word as the member moving the motion, I thank you for this opportunity. Vinaka.